Imagine a hell where you have no control over your own body. Welcome back to my journey reading every Junji Ito manga. Today we're going to be reading two stories that explore this disturbing concept. Magami Nanakuse and Whispering Woman, both of which can be found in the short story collection Fragments of Horror if you're interested. Magami Nanakuse begins with a young woman named Kaoru gushing over her favorite author, who is named Magami Nanakuse. Kaoru is a quirky young woman who loves solitude and reading. She aspires to be an author herself one day. Kaoru tells us that one of the defining characteristics of Magami's stories are her quirky characters. She gives each one a strange tic. Kaoru is so obsessed with these books that she writes a fan letter to Magami, and to her surprise, she gets a response telling her to come hang out and bring her writings that she has been working on. Kaoru can hardly believe it, and she is thrilled. She gets on a bus as soon as possible and takes the long journey into a remote town, far up into the mountains, completely alone, having told no one where she is going or what she is doing. When Kaoru arrives at the bus station, she is greeted by an incredibly old woman who tells her that she is here to pick her up. They head to Magami's house, which the old woman refers to as a place where disaster falls on whoever enters it. The woman leads Kaoru into the house, through a narrow hallway of vases and knickknacks into a living room, where Kaoru finds Magami sitting on her couch in a dress, smoking a cigarette, with a strange grin on her face. Kaoru is shocked by her strange masculine appearance, but more than her appearance, it is Magami's actions that are bizarre. While Kaoru is thanking her for the invite, Magami starts to pick her nose, but it gets even more weird. Rather than being supportive, Magami tells Kaoru that she has no talent and will never be a successful writer. She digs deeper and gets more and more manic, finally shouting that Kaoru is a tic faker. We don't know what a tic faker means, but Kaoru is completely shocked and horrified by this. She wets herself in embarrassment and slumps to the floor. Kaoru sobs, and Magami continues to relentlessly point at her and insult her. Now at this point in the story, it is clear that Magami is an incredibly strange individual. She seems to have a thing for tics, or quirky little body movements. For example, she abruptly snorts, cries, shakes her head, and then announces a shoulder tic. Magami gets up from the couch and approaches the sobbing Kaoru. She has a strange proposal. She suggests that they have a drink from her extensive collection of quirky alcohol. The two sit down, and to Magami's surprise, Kaoru can handle her liquor. They trade insults between shots, calling each other tic fakers. Although Kaoru lasts longer than anyone expected, eventually, the alcohol gets the best of her, and she slumps onto the bar, passed out. Magami is surprised and tells the old woman to throw Kaoru into the dungeon, saying that this one might have some unexpected promise. That night, Magami has a dinner party with the leaders of the small town that she lives in. They are honored to have a famous person join their small community. As Magami makes quirky gestures, the town's leaders mimic her every movement, almost as if they cannot control their own bodies. She snorts, they snort. She cracks her fingers, they crack their fingers. She shakes her head, of course, they shake their heads. There is no limit to the absurdity. Magami extends her tongue out unnaturally far in a grotesque gesture, and with pained expressions, each member of the town extends their tongue out equally far. We next see Kaoru waking up in complete darkness. She looks to be inside of a prison cell. As her eyes adjust to the dark, she can see that she is not alone. All around her, there are other cells with other prisoners. And the prisoners are far from normal. Each one has a unique movement that they are repeating over and over again. One prisoner shakes back and forth violently. Another prisoner stands there completely naked, flailing his arms up and down like a bird. And yet another licks the cell bars before wincing in pain to repeat it again and again and again. Kaoru hears a noise. She turns to see Magami walking down the stairs. Kaoru demands to know what is going on here, and Magami tells her that all of her prisoners eventually will develop tics due to their confinement. but none of them are quite up to her expectations. Remember, in every single book that Magami writes, the characters have specific tics that make the books bestsellers. Magami is not satisfied with the other prisoners, but she believes that Kaoru shows promise. She plans to leave Kaoru locked up until eventually she breaks mentally and will develop the next tic that she has been waiting for. Kaoru screams. It is a scream of anger and terror and defeat, and despite the screams, she remains locked up. She collapses to her knees again, where all she can do is stare at the other prisoners and wait. Soon, the effects begin to wear on her. She looks at the prisoner shaking his head and begins to feel the impulse herself. Her neck begins to move back and forth, and she grabs her head with both hands, holding it in place. She screams in agony as she tries to resist the urge. She falls to the floor and begins to feel something strange in her body, a sort of stiffness beginning to spread. Her hands begin to move on her face. They shake as she tries her best to resist, but this time she cannot stop them. She grabs onto her own cheeks and begins to pull down the flesh. Some time passes, and we see Magami has been watching Kaoru's every movement on a camera. Kaoru is turned away from the camera's view, frozen in place, standing and staring at her cell's wall. Magami goes down the stairs into the dungeon and enters Kaoru's cell. Kaoru has not moved for 3 days. For 3 days, she has been completely still in this position, and Magami wants to get a closer look to see what's going on. As she enters the cell, Kaoru makes no movement at all, not even a twitch. Magami grabs her wrist, and she can feel that there's still a pulse. She turns Magami, and what she sees is something from hell itself. Kaoru's face is deformed beyond recognition. Her skin has been stretched in every possible direction, beyond its natural limits, leaving her eyes in a permanent state of being wide open with an empty stare. She must have pulled her lips with an equal amount of force, because they too are stretched and hang open, having lost all of their tension. Magami screams in terror, but the terror soon turns to something else: joy. The psychotic writer has gotten what she wants. She declares that she has found the ultimate tic. In the final panel, we see that Magami's plan worked perfectly. She wrote a best-selling novel using Kaoru's torture as inspiration. Magami and the town leaders pose together with a horrible expression, mocking Kaoru's permanently disfigured face. And that is the end of Magami Nanakuse by Junji Ito. In a single word, this story was incredibly quirky. I did think the lighter tone at the first half made the crash into darker territory more impactful. I wouldn't call it anywhere near the best or scariest story that we've read thus far, but it definitely had interesting aspects. The villain reminded me of Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs, and the idea of slowly losing control over your body or mind is always terrifying. The more I pondered on the story and thought it over, the more I realized it was an interesting commentary on blindly following trends. Sure, the premise of the story is overall ridiculous, but it's not a stretch to say that real people get enamored with celebrities and mimic them. It was a cool idea to make a story showing the exaggerated consequence of that mimicry. If you're enjoying the video so far, make sure to subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. I'm reading every Junji Ito manga and making a video on each one. Subscribing helps me a ton, it's free to you, and make sure that you're notified when I release the next video. Up next, we're going to read Whispering Woman. The story begins with our narrator describing a young girl named Mayumi. Unfortunately, Mayumi is plagued with uncontrollable anxiety. So much so that she cannot make a single decision by herself. This is no exaggeration. It goes beyond asking what she should eat or wear. She asks if she should blink, smile, literally everything. Of course, this leads to her needing special care, but Mayumi's father struggles to find anyone that can tolerate her needs more than a few days. That is until one day there is a knock at the door. Mayumi's father answers it to be greeted by a young, tired-looking woman named Mitsu, who came for an interview after seeing the help wanted ad in the newspaper. The father leads Mitsu to the living room where they sit as the father explains the job. What he is looking for is someone to spend all day with his daughter. The only way to help Mayumi's anxiety is for someone to shadow her and answer her every question, a job that no one has succeeded in thus far. They head to Mayumi's room so that Mitsu can meet her. As they walk up the stairs, they can hear screaming. They enter Mayumi's room to find her screaming in the corner. She cannot decide if she should be standing or sitting. The father does his best to calm her down, but clearly is struggling. Mitsu seizes the opportunity. She comes close to Mayumi and calmly starts answering her questions. Where to sit, how to sit, what to do next. And to the father's shock, what Mitsu is doing is working. Mitsu continues this for the remainder of the day, all the way until Mayumi falls asleep in her bed that night. The father apologizes for throwing her right into work, but is elated at how good she did. This was the first stable day Mayumi has had in a long time, and to her father's joy, Mitsu agrees to return at 8 a.m. the next morning. A month passes, and we see the father reflecting on it with a friend. Mitsu has accomplished more than anyone else has. Mayumi has stable days and has even gone out in public with Mitsu. Despite this, the father has an off feeling. He knows how difficult Mayumi is, and the fact that Mitsu can tolerate her so effortlessly is in itself very strange. Not to mention, the father knows very little about Mitsu. In addition to all that, Mitsu works unnaturally hard. One night, as she was leaving, the father notices how tired she looks. He tells Mitsu to take tomorrow off, but Mitsu refuses, telling him that she loves her job and it brings her joy. The father is surprised, but does not push the matter any further. He does comment, though, that sometimes she shows up to work with bruises, but this, Mitsu refuses to speak about and leaves for the night. 2 more months pass, and the father tells his friend that things continue to get more strange. Mitsu is fully dedicated to her work, but she has become a shell of her former self. Before the friend can ask what he means by that, there is a knock on the door, and Mayumi and Mitsu enter. Mayumi looks healthy and vibrant. By all accounts, she looks like a normal young girl, but what follows behind her is a different story. Mitsu looks like a shadow of her former self. Her eyes have gone white as ivory, and her pale, gaunt face is curtained with her black hair, now streaked with ribbons of gray. She leans close to Mayumi at all times, like a ghost haunting her. Every step Mayumi takes, Mitsu commands with whispers in her ear, like a puppeteer controlling her puppet. The two leave the room, and the father's friend is in shock. It is just as the father described. Something is not right here. For this reason, the father had a secret investigation done on Mitsu, and the results are shocking. Mitsu lives with a man named Aga, and he is vile in every way imaginable. Aga does not work, but spends all of the money that Mitsu makes on gambling and alcohol. Even worse, Aga beats Mitsu almost every single day. The father is shocked by the investigation, and reflects how strange it is that Mitsu is able to make such wise decisions for his daughter constantly, but seems unable to make decisions in her own life that would improve her own well-being. The father decides that what they have found out is Mitsu's personal business, and they can do nothing about it. Mitsu continues to whisper constant commands into Mayumi's ear, but as time passes, her condition continues to get worse and worse, until finally, after 2 years, her body is found dead in her apartment. Although she was severely emaciated, the cause of her death was due to injuries given to her by Aga. Aga was able to escape prior to police finding the body. When the father hears the news, he runs to Mayumi's room, distraught at the fact that his daughter is sure to relapse. But as he opens the door, Mayumi seems to be acting completely normal. The father begins to tell Mayumi about Mitsu's death, but before he can finish, Mayumi tells the father that Mitsu is with them, right now in this room. She points behind her and then giggles, as if she is being tickled by an unseen force. The father is shocked and cannot understand what is going on, but his daughter's state remains stable. Maybe it's a ghost, or maybe it's simply Mayumi's delusion. The father doesn't know, but some days, when the father listens very closely, He swears he can almost hear Mitsu whispering behind his daughter. All things considered, things seem to be going fairly well. The father is thankful for the daughter's improved mental state. Everything seems normal until one day he is walking in the garden and can hear Mayumi asking, "Like this?" followed by a pounding sound. He peeks his head around a bush and can see her stabbing the ground with a huge knife over and over and over again. On the final page, we see a thing of nightmares. It is the dead of night, and Mayumi is entering her home, greeting her father with a grin. She is covered from head to toe in blood. Her dress is crimson moist with gore. Beads of blood drip around her crazed, wide eyes. With a smile, Mayumi tells her father that she killed Aga because Mitsu told her to. And that is the end of Whispering Woman. I thought that this story was an absolute banger. Is there anything more satisfying than a victim of abuse getting revenge? This story had a really unique angle that we have not seen before. The horror elements were not necessarily threatening to the protagonist. The guidance from Mitsu and the lingering spirit that kept whispering even after death was well-intentioned start to finish. Maybe you could argue a little selfish using her to kill Aga, but still, well-intentioned enough. This story leaves a lot to think about at the end. We know that Mayumi cannot really make decisions on her own, so in a way, she no longer exists, being guided by Mitsu's every command. Normally this would seem cruel, but to me, it didn't feel that way, because she had so much anxiety on her own. Lots to ponder. This is the type of story I could talk about for hours, and I'd love to know what you think. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Make sure to let me know your thoughts on these stories in the comments below. Was Mitsu evil, or did she have Mayumi's best interests at heart? I need to know your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video as we continue the journey of reading every single Junji Ito story together.